Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and pre-release format is right around the corner for the newest expansion, Pitch Black, and I'm super excited. Pitch Black, I've talked a lot about on the channel, and it's super cool. But today I'm going to be talking about the 5 weirdest, I guess, pre-release promos we've seen. This is a bit of a history lesson, as well as just some weird stuff. I'm not obviously covering all the pre-release promos. These are just 5 strange ones. Again, probably the strangest in my opinion. And I will be going in chronological order. But if you don't know what pre-release is, unsurprisingly, it is before the set comes out. You're able to play on these pre-release events. Some of these I don't think necessarily had pre-release events. I'm not familiar with some of these older ones, but it's definitely really interesting to learn about. And tell me any other things you have in the comment section. If there's anything about these older ones that I don't, then leave that there as well. I'd love to hear about them. But anyways, let's hop right in with the first card. Also, some of these this one from Legends Awakened, Buck's Training. As you can see here, it's a supporter, which is weird. This is, I believe, the only not Pokemon. It's the only trainer. There haven't been energies either. So this card is a supporter. This is from the, I believe this is the Diamond Pearl era. I'm not 100% sure. Before Black White, I'm not super familiar. Yeah, this is Diamond Pearl, and this card again is a supporter. It's, by the way, like, these are super wacky looking at the top. It's supporter and it's also a supporter. I don't know why it says it twice here, but anyways, you draw 2, and then as long as Buck's Training is next to your active Pokemon, each of your active Pokemon's attacks do 10 more to your opponent's active Pokemon. This card, again, it is weird being the only trainer, which is definitely the weird part about this card, but it's also weird when you look at it compared to modern cards. You can see here the reminder text on the what supporters do. It says you can only play one supporter each turn, right? But then when you play this card, you put it next to your active. When your turn ends, you discard it. This used to be the rule, so your support cards would stay in play. This would, I believe, be to remember that you played a support on your turn. Here it also means that it's a way to indicate that you're doing extra damage this turn. Again, this is kind of weird. This isn't what we see in current standard. Obviously, this makes like a minor difference of you can't recover the card the turn you play it, but ultimately it is interesting. I know some people who actually sometimes do this or have a supporter marker. And then also it says each of your active Pokemon's attacks do 10 more. Theoretically, there was this format where you'd have 2 active Pokemon. I'm not very familiar with it. As far as I'm aware, it wasn't really popular, but it means a lot of the cards at this time had all these weird wordings to them that don't make any sense. Like, why do you have 2 actives? That's what it's referring to there, though, which is definitely interesting as a concept, I guess, with this doubles kind of thing going on there. It is definitely weird, just kind of all around as a card, but definitely interesting to see. Also, this card didn't get a well, I'm talking about pre-release promos, but this one wasn't actually a promo. It had a sticker on it of the set, which we'll see some in just a moment if you're not familiar with them, but it wasn't a different card art, unlike a lot of these other ones here. Then we have the next card here, which is Tornadus EX. This one is from Legendary Treasures. As we can see, this has a different art than the regular art from the set here, and then it's officially a promo. It's a different card number. This card is a basic EX. This is a different mechanic than the current EX mechanic we have in Standard. These EXs were all basic, so if you had, for example, Greninja EX, that would have been a basic Pokemon, unlike Greninja EX in Standard, which is a Stage 2. They are all 2 prizes, though, like the ones we have right now. Also, they are capitalized, so they are a different name. And then you have 2 attacks here. For 2 colors, you do 30, and then if there's stay in play, you do 60, and then for 3 colors, you do 100, and on a coin flip, you discard an energy attached to this Pokemon. This card, I don't think was super good in Standard. I'm not, again, super familiar with this era in Standard. I'm moderately familiar, but this card certainly isn't an amazing card here. But this card, you're able to, in a pre-release setting, you get an EX. And by the way, I didn't say this yet, but there's only one pre-release promo for each of these sets until there's a point when they switched to 4 pre-release promos. But Tornadus EX here is definitely interesting, being the only EX pre-release promo. Again, pretty much all of them are single prize Pokemon, but this one is an EX. And again, Buck's Training was a supporter. So this is definitely interesting to see. Also, we do see, looking at some history stuff here, we see that it has resistance of -20, which you don't see in Standard. Also, another side note about resistance, I do wish that Pokemon would bring back more resistances in the TCG, or honestly just get rid of them. I mean, it's not super important, I'm not going to lie. I'm pretty sure Pocket, let me quickly check. let me look at just a random card. Yeah, so they don't have resistance and pocket. Pocket weakness is plus damage as opposed to multiplying damage, so that is a difference there. But they don't have resistance in the TCG. In standard, the only types that are resisted are going to be fighting or grass. Grass is resisted by metal, and then fighting is resisted by certain psychic Pokemon as well as Pokemon that in the video game are flying. These Pokemon are going to be. Let me see. Is this gonna get me the right thing? No. Is this the right thing? Here we go. No, that's also not the right thing. Okay, here we go. So in standard, we see. Let's see. I definitely should have prepared this beforehand, but here we go. So we see a bunch of cards that are resistant to. Let me start by type here. Resistant to fighting in standard here. A lot of them are colorless. Pokemon that are like mono flying would be translated to colorless, but then Pokemon, or like we see Tornadus here. But then when you look at other Pokemon like these Crobats and Moltres and different things like that, you can even see like a lightning Pokemon weak to lightning and then resistant to fighting. There you go. You can actually see it now. It took a second to load there. That is an interesting thing if you didn't know. And flying type from the video game is the only type translated to the TCG that does that. We don't see that any other way. In standard right now, there isn't really anything being messed around with weakness of resistance. Previously, though, we saw some Pokemon with things mixed around here, but Tornadus EX is like the regular typing that we saw at the time, and again, pretty much the same as it is in standard there, which is interesting to see. This is just a little weird here, not crazy weird. Moving on to the next card here, we have Moltres from Face Collide. This isn't actually a very interesting Pokemon. It does 20 for 1 fire, and then has 120 HP. It's a basic. We can actually see, okay, this is a Pokemon where they did weird stuff with the weakness. So Moltres, of course, is a fire Pokemon. If we look at different Moltres cards, we see, I'm pretty sure, I was going to say they're all fire. Actually, they're not. So obviously Glaring Moltres isn't fire. There's this Rockets one, which is darkness, apparently. And then there's the Bird Trio. But then, we see the rest are all fire. We see that a lot are weak to water. Like this Moltres from Pokemon Go is weak to water. But then, and like the one in standard that we have that season plate is weak to water. But then we see some, like Team Rex Moltres EX is weak to lightning, resistant to fighting here. But then we see this weird mixing and matching where it's weak to water but resistant to fighting, which is something kind of special that we see for these flying type Pokemon, which is kind of cool in my opinion. Again, I like them messing around with the weakness and resistance. Obviously, I like the types because my channel is 10 types, and you should like 10 types too, so then you should subscribe as well. But then you have Flying Flare for 4 energy, 2 which are fire. You do 80, and then you can do 40 yourself, and you can do 40 more than 20 to yourself if you do that 40 more. This card, again, also not good. It's I believe it was within, and one of the better cards within the starter decks in the in Pokemon TCG Online. But that's a weird thing. I was gonna say for another video, but probably not. Let's be honest. But we see this Pokemon is kind of whatever. It is for Face Glide though, and Face Glide is the first set to have 4 pre-release promos. So Face Glide, we see. If we look at the X and Y promos, the Moltres was the first one. We got White Hero, and we got Zygarde and Tyranitar. This one with 5 Darkness Energy. Some weird cards here. The X and Y era definitely had some really interesting cards, but we had only 3 sets from the X and Y era with 4 pre-release promos. I believe we had, Face Glide, we had Steam Siege. Face Glide, by the way, the ones in Face Glide are pretty trash. I believe all 4 are not good. I'm not, again, super familiar with all of like the more mediocre decks from this era, but they're not super good. Then you look at like Yanmega though. This is a more interesting card. Volcanion. I don't know if Hoopo's used some. Definitely a decent card. And then Clotsart. I don't think this card's very good. But then you see some better pre-release promos in standard right now. When you see the pre-release promos, generally they're pretty decent. And then we move to the last set, Evolutions. Where are the pre-release promos? I'm missing them. I'm sure they're like right in front of me, and I'm just being like, just missing them. But anyways, you had them for Evolutions as well. And what on earth are these cards? I don't know. But okay, apparently Champions Festival. But we have the Evolutions pre-release promos as well, which I believe Mewtwo was one and Charizard was one. Okay, those Pokemon also have so many cards, but let me find this. This is going to bother me if I don't find it now, so I'm going to find it. maybe they didn't have different arts. I could be wrong about that. So they might not have had different arts there, or it could just be missing them. Tell me in the comment section. Again, I don't know all this stuff off the top of my head here, but it is definitely interesting to see that there are only a few sets in the X and Y era which had 3 pre-release promos. This is when they moved to like the actual pre-release format kind of thing that you're used to now. I will say though, previously, and this is even true when we just look at actually all the pre-release promos in this video are gonna this is going to apply to them. It only doesn't apply to the megas, and that is that you had your pre-release promo, and then you had kind of 2 half kits. So, for example, if your pre-release promo was Moltres, and then your other one was you had Moltres as your pre-release promo, you could also get some like water stuff from the White Hero set, or you had like Mega as your pre-release promo. You could also get stuff from the Volcanion kit, and you'd have this mix and match, which I actually think is really interesting. It makes the pre-release kits objectively weaker. I talked about this in the past, but it does, in my opinion, make them a lot more interesting to deck build with and play around with. Then we have the next card here. This is this Deoxys. This card is, I mean, it's just a weird card in general. It's from the expansion Fusion Strike, and it has 3 tags in it. First of all, you have the attack Photon Boost, which is for 3 colors. You do 80. If you have Fusion Strike attached, just 80 more. This card saw some play within UV Max. It was a counter to something. I don't remember what this would counter to off the top of my head. Again, someone tell me in the comment section. I know it was important for some matchup, but I don't remember. I didn't play very much Movie Max either. I'm not sure if I really played this card much at all. But this card is weird because, as you can see in the top right-hand corner, it has Fusion Strike, Single Strike, and Rapid Strike. These things mean it can interact with certain things, is kind of what it allows you to do. So we see it within UV Max. UV Max, if you're not familiar with deck, you got Genesect V, which lets you draw until as many cards in hand as Fusion Strike Pokemon in play. Honestly, one of the best cards ever. This card's just like super broken. But anyways, this card wants Fusion Strike Pokemon in play, so Deoxys meets that requirement. Same thing with Fusion Strike Energy, which you actually, if you had this attack and it wasn't Fusion Strike, you couldn't even get the Fusion Strike Energy on it, and then it would just like fall off if it somehow did end up on it. But then we see this is also played in, as I scroll down all the way to the bottom, this Gengar deck. This has Houndoom. Houndoom accelerates Single Strike Energy to Single Strike Pokemon, and then that boosts the damage you do, and you can only do that on this Deoxys here because you are a Single Strike Pokemon. There's some other wacky stuff you can do with this card. Ultimately, it's not super good, I'm not going to lie. It's more so gimmicky, and it is pretty fun, but more so gimmicky. And then this card's even weirder because in the lower left-hand corner of the image, it says Fusion Strike again, because the set is Fusion Strike. Also, by the way, a Fusion Strike, not a very good name for a set. I mean, I guess it's very on the nose. I'd say it's too on the nose. I suppose the set, Fusion Strike, by the way, it obviously features the Fusion Strike mechanic. These are like the Battle Styles mechanics, which, by the way, the set Battle Styles featured the Battle Styles mechanics. But there was 2 of them, and I don't think it's as confusing as Fusion Strike in Fusion Strike, but it was mostly focused around the UV Max stack. As far as I'm aware, the rest of the stuff in this set was kind of trash. I'm trying to think if there's anything that was good that... Okay, Battle VIP Pass was good. There's some other cards that were decent. Most of them went into the UV Max deck, though. So... yeah, unfortunately, this set was really bad, except from UV Max, that deck, which was like super good. But we see this card, which is Fusion Strike, Single Strike, Rapid Strike, and also Fusion Strike. There's also, so the 4 pre-release promos from this set, we had, obviously they all have this Fusion Strike tag on them. With like Latias here, we see Fusion Strike and then Fusion Strike again, which is kind of funny. Oricorio, same thing, Fusion Strike and then Fusion Strike again. It's pretty wacky looking in my opinion. And then the weirdest one, maybe, I mean, I think Deoxys might be the weirdest. There's 4 like things just sitting on it, but Pyukumuku has Fusion Strike, but it's not a Fusion Strike Pokemon. I mean, it is a Fusion Strike Pokemon because it's from the Fusion Strike set. Well, it's actually not from the set because it's a promo, and it also isn't a Fusion Strike Pokemon. This is just a big mess, as you can see as I'm like explaining it, but it's funny. It's weird. Definitely a weird set. With some interesting, honestly, dynamics within the pre-release. I think you got some... you have synergy between the kits, which is something you often don't have. Then moving on to the last weird pre-release promo, we have Team Rocket's Mimikyu. I was playing with this one kind of recently, and when I say I was playing with it, I wasn't playing with it because it sucks. It's super trash. So pre-release promos, as I said, are often good cards in standard. And Team Rocket's Mimikyu is a pretty good card in standard. It's not like broken. I honestly haven't really seen this card play too much, and I play some Dragapult, and I don't really see people play this outside of, I guess, the Team Rockets Mewtwo deck where I see it, but mostly I see it used as a pivot. It does have free retreat, so if you are playing the pre-release format, you can play it as a pivot. Also, this is another pre-release promo, which, by the way, I don't know why this is the case, but this is the only Sword and Shield era pre-release promo that, or it's a set of pre-release promos where they didn't have actual promos. They just had a stamp on the card. So again, it does look different because it has the stamp saying Destiny Rivals on it, but they're not separate arts there, which is kind of weird. And I don't know the reason for that. But and you have this attack here, Gemstone Mimicry for Psychic Colors. You choose one of your active Terra Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. And standard, obviously good against Dragapult and stuff like that. When I say stuff like that, mostly Dragapult could be used in other situations. And this card is cool, but not in pre-release. Literally, you look at Destiny Rivals, and not only are Terras not common, they are literally rare, or I guess ultra rare. Okay, also limitless. What are you doing here? But then you look through the set, and there aren't any Terra Pokemon in the set. Like, this is super weird. Terras were pretty much discontinued at this point. Technically, we got a few later on, but yeah, this is super strange. It like has this mechanic it interacts with, but the mechanic doesn't even exist in this set. So this card is super terrible in pre-release. I was gonna make a video on entirely cards like this where they're just super bad in pre-release, but they are the promos. By the way, they do this so that people can get the cards and they have these cool arts, or I guess stamps on them for these good cards. But then the rest of the kit, by the way, it doesn't contain any Team Rocket's Mimikyus. I think it contains Team Rocket's Murkrows and Weezings, if I'm not mistaken, unless I'm mixing it up with another kit. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what's in this kit. And so you just like cut the Team Rocket's Mimikyu because it's bad, and then you'll play with other stuff. And it's not good, right? This card is useless. It is a Pokemon that has free retreat, which is something. That's it. So this card is super terrible. There are some other ones that are not very good that like interact with EX and things like that, but most of the time those have like usable-ish attacks, just like an Aegislash, Decidueye, things like that, which wall EXs, but this can't attack, and it only has one attack, and you can't use it in pre-release format, so it's just super bad. But ultimately, there's a lot of weird stuff with the history of the pre-release promos and the history of the Pokemon TCG in general. Tell me down below in the comment section if you learned anything new from this. Also, if there's anything I missed. As I said, I am familiar with the history some, but there are some things I'm less familiar with and could have gotten wrong. I certainly did some research before this, but not like a crazy amount. A lot of it is just stuff that I know, so there's a chance I made a mistake there. But I hope you all enjoyed. Make sure you like and subscribe. Visit, comment down below your thoughts and any other video ideas you have for me. Also, huge shout outs to my YouTube members for supporting me. It really means a ton, but I hope you all enjoyed, and as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.